panel is here. Michael Gerson, columnist for The Washington Post, Democratic strategist Stephanie Cutter, Heather McGee, president of the liberal group Demos, and Hugh Hewitt, host on the Salem Radio Network. President Trump's been tweeting a lot this morning. I figured I should update all of you. Whatever the United States can do to help out in London and the UK, we will be there. And in all caps, we are with you. God bless. Some critical tweets as well, though. At least 7 dead and 48 wounded, the president tweets, in terror attack. And Mayor of London says there is no reason to be alarmed. He did say that, but not in that context. He talked about increased police protection for what that's worth. And finally, we need to be smart, vigilant, and tough. We need the courts to give us back our rights. We need the travel ban as an extra level of safety. Hugh Hewitt, you are somebody that worked at the Justice Department. You know about legal arguments. This is in front of the Supreme Court. Should he have tweeted the phrase travel ban?
Yes, I think he's actually raising the ante in terms of getting the court to move more quickly on its disposition. He is fairly confident, as I am, that the Fourth Circuit's decision is wrong. However, the first tweet is the tweet I like. There is an alliance within the alliance, the Five Eyes Alliance, and an attack on one of those five. We always bemoan, and rightly so, any attack anywhere in the world. But New Zealand, Australia, Canada, the United Kingdom, and the U.S. are the Five Eyes Alliance. He should stick to the high road on this, nothing else.
Well, he's already attacked the Mayor of London, Stephanie.
He has. I mean, never before in our history have we seen a president of the United States confirming something ahead of his own National Security Council, forwarding things that are printed on Drudge about a terror attack in one of our dearest alliances in London. So, number one. Number two, he's politicizing it by attacking the Mayor of London. Mayor of London saying no reason for alarm. He's trying to calm his citizens. And the president is essentially making fun of that. And then he's politicizing it by bringing up the travel ban. Forget the legal argument about what it does in the Supreme Court by saying the ban is a ban, even though they're arguing that it's not a ban. Right. Politicizing a moment of a terror attack has never been done before by a president of the United States.
Michael and Heather, I want to get to a second part of this, and it's what Theresa May said. And it's something that Michael Leiter and I touched on, which is this idea. She said there's been too much tolerance extremism in UK society for too long, and then she put it right on a little bit on Silicon Valley, you know, and they need a little bit more help there. But that's going to create some tricky conversations.
No, I completely agree with that. I mean, this is a case where I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Oh, no, that's all right. Heather, sure. Jump in here. I mean, we're going to have this civil liberties conversation. They're going to have it in the UK. We have a First Amendment. They don't. So they can do some things that we can't do.
That's right. And I think that this is a question of context, balance, and approach. We have been so fortunate. I mean, I live in New York City. I would never have believed about how safe that I feel even today after September 11th. This is a moment for the people of the UK where they are experiencing a heightened sense of fragility, walking into bars and concerts and crossing the street on the bridge. And yet, at the same time, I know that people in the communities of color in this country are also seeing that the president and the right wing are ignoring domestic extremism here in the United States, whether or not it's the young man who was a person who is in the military, who was killed by a white supremacist, or the veteran who stepped in, obviously, in Portland, Oregon. So I think that there is a broad conversation to have about administration that is tolerating right-wing extremism and hate, as well as obviously the continued threat of a war that we are continuing to not prosecute well overseas.
Michael.
Yeah, and I think being tough on terrorism means very different things. It means going after sources of intelligence, but it means engaging the Muslim community in a way that actually encourages their cooperation in this. There's no way to do the war on terror while you're alienating that community, and I think that that's what Donald risked in America.
All right, I want to shift to the Paris Agreement here. I know there's a partisan divide. Why is there a part? Why are we the only Western country, Hugh, where the conservative movement in this country is more skeptical of climate change than the conservative movements in Canada, in the UK, in France, in Germany.
Well, I am not skeptical of climate change, and I thought Secretary Kerry was perfectly contemptuous of conservatives and rule of law conservatives especially, and you nailed him on it, Chuck. You said this did not go to the Senate. The Montreal Protocol, as Secretary Schultz likes to point out, was a key and effective anticipation of a necessary global movement. It was submitted to the Senate. It was ratified 83-0 in 1988. When President Obama chose not to go to the Senate, it was an admission against interest, and Secretary Kerry's contemptuous dismissiveness of the science.
You're dismissing actually the majority of Republican voters who do want to see action on climate change. The real partisan divide is the Republican politicians who have been paid by fossil fuel industry to absolutely deny what for this country is the single biggest opportunity to generate wealth in the 21st century. We invented solar in this country, and now we are at risk of seeing China be the one to give its people tens of millions of green jobs.
And both sides have some problems here. I mean, there are some who claim that this voluntary, relatively modest treaty is going to destroy the economy, like Donald Trump, and some that it will save the world. Actually, neither of those is true. We've got a reality where we have a certain amount of coal and natural gas in the ground. We can't take out 80% of it or 50% of natural gas. And the only way that that works is when you have a cost-effective alternative. And the only way that happens is when you have technological innovation. And that's where I think people could agree on this matter.
By the way, go ahead.
I was just going to say, and solar will soon be the cheapest source of electricity on the planet. We are hampering ourselves from what could be the biggest opportunity to address inequality, create millions of jobs for the next generation that is looking out at this job climate and not seeing any other opportunity
by the way, Stephanie,
but green jobs.
I talked to Al Gore and John Kerry. You heard John Kerry. I talked to Al Gore. Al Gore, while upset about the decision to get out of Paris, is optimistic that this coalition of Democratic governors and mayors and that the CEOs of America are essentially going to do Paris without the federal government. John Kerry is much more pessimistic. Who's right?
Well, actually, that is what I was going to address. To Hugh's comment that you mentioned that Kerry was dismissive to rule of law conservatives. Well, there are a lot of rule of law conservatives who didn't want to get out of the Paris Agreement. You're making a process argument. You don't like the way we got into it, so you're taking us out of it. That argument doesn't hold up. So why penalize the country?
The Constitution is
even
never
if you don't
a
like,
process argument.
Even if
the
you
Constitution
don't,
is a fundamental
but
deal.
Hugh, you're penalizing the country because of that argument.
Okay,
and wait, I'm not done.
I'm
not done.
Okay.
As a result, there are
entertain it.
Mayors and governors and heads of major manufacturers and oil companies, many of whom are Republicans, who want to stay in the agreement because they see what it means for our economy and our competitiveness.
I get that, but the argument that needs to be made has to be a consensus.
That's what Al Gore
program.
is getting at. That this is going to happen anyway. We are going to make the country is going to continue to move forward in developing the technologies and meeting our targets, regardless of what Donald Trump does and says. He's abdicated his leadership, but we have not abdicated America's leadership.
You can never get to consensus via contempt. 75 years ago this week was the Battle of Midway. It's a turning point. I want to connect the two stories. This country cannot effectively prosecute the war on terror if half the discussions begin with contempt of conservatives and people who have a different point of view. At the end of the second battle of El Alamein, Churchill said, "This is not the end. This is not the end, but it's the beginning. The end of the beginning. We have to get to a beginning."
Conservatives, we're talking about the planet right now and the future of the American economy.
But conservatives disagree with what Donald Trump did.
I'm going to pause it here.
Okay.